The lobby smelled like money, not the kind of money you earn, the kind you inherit. Cedar and leather polish and something floral that cost more per bottle than most people's car payments. The chandeliers overhead weren't just lighting, they were announcements. Wendell Pruitt noticed all of it. He always did. He stood near the entrance of the Alderton Grand, just off Michigan Avenue, with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a paper cup of coffee from the gas station 2 blocks east. His boots were scuffed. His jacket was the kind of canvas work jacket that had been washed so many times the color had bled from dark brown into something closer to sand. He hadn't shaved in 4 days. He didn't look like a man who belonged in a place like this. That was in some ways the point. Wendell Pruitt was 53 years old. He had spent the last 26 of those years building things. Hotels, specifically. Not decorating them, not managing them, building them. The Alderton Grand Chicago had been completed 18 months ago, and the original investor group had held it for exactly that long before putting it back on the market. Wendell's holding company, Pruitt Capital Group, had finalized acquisition 11 days ago. Nobody on the floor knew that yet. He hadn't come to announce himself. He came to see. There's a thing that happens in hotels when ownership changes hands and nobody's told the staff. The place runs on whatever habits it had before. Old energy, old rules, old attitudes. Wendell had done this before, walked into properties he'd just purchased, unremarkable, unannounced, and watched. He called it reading the room. His attorney called it unnecessarily dramatic. His attorney was not wrong, but Wendell kept doing it anyway. He crossed the marble floor toward the front desk. There were 2 clerks on duty. One was a young woman with a name tag that said Cora, who was helping a family with 3 children and what appeared to be 7 pieces of luggage. She was patient, unhurried, smiling at the youngest child, who was attempting to climb the side of the counter. The other clerk was a man, mid-30s, thick through the shoulders, with a name tag that said Kyle Branford, front desk supervisor. Kyle Branford was not helping anyone. He was standing behind his station looking at his phone with the particular expression of someone who had been bored for a very long time and had stopped trying to hide it. Wendell approached the desk. Kyle Branford did not look up. Wendell set his coffee cup on the counter. He waited. Kyle Branford swiped at something on his screen. "Be with you," he said, without looking up, in the tone of a man who will not in fact be with you anytime soon. Wendell waited another moment. Then, "Whenever you're ready." Something about the patience in that voice made Kyle Branford finally look up. He took in the canvas jacket, the scuffed boots, the gas station coffee. His expression shifted in a way that was subtle enough to be deniable and obvious enough to be unmistakable. "Checking in?" Kyle Branford said. "Thought I'd ask about availability," Wendell said. Kyle Branford looked back down at his screen. "We're pretty full this weekend. Convention block? I see." Wendell glanced around the lobby. "Looks like you've got some vacancy. Saw a few keys in the drawer there." Kyle Branford's jaw tightened. "Sir, I just told you, convention block. Those rooms are held." "Right," Wendell said. He let that sit for a second. "I'll take whatever you've got available then. Single room is fine." Kyle Branford set his phone face down on the counter in the slow, deliberate way of a man who wants you to know you're being an inconvenience. He typed something into the terminal. He looked at the screen. He typed something else. "I'm showing a room at $480 a night," he said. His voice had the particular music of someone who hopes the number will make the problem go away. "That's fine," Wendell said. Kyle Branford blinked. "It's a 2-night minimum. Also fine." There was a pause. Kyle Branford had not expected that. He typed something. Then he looked up, credit card. Wendell reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a card. He set it on the counter. Kyle Branford picked it up. He looked at it for a moment longer than he needed to. It was a matte black card. No logo on the face. The name on it read, W. Pruitt. Kyle Branford ran it. The machine approved it in 2 seconds. He set the card down on the counter, not handed back, set down the way you'd set something on a surface when you don't particularly want to touch it, and slid a key envelope across. "Room 1408, he said. "Elevators that way." He pointed without looking. Wendell picked up his card and the envelope. "Appreciate it." He turned toward the elevator. He was 3 steps away when Kyle Branford spoke again, not to him but to Cora, just loud enough. "Convention's gonna be a long weekend." Cora didn't respond. She was still focused on the family. Wendell Pruitt kept walking. The room was good. The Alderton Grand had been built to a high standard. Wendell had made sure of that personally. had argued with two different contractors about the tile selection in the bathrooms and the weight of the doors and the angle of the windows to the street. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked out at the city for a while and drank the last of his gas station coffee. He was not angry yet. He had learned over the years to let things settle before he decided what they were. His phone had 17 messages. He ignored them. He called his daughter instead. "You're in the hotel already?" Simone said. She was 31 and ran operations for Pruitt Capital, which meant she was essentially the person who kept the whole enterprise from falling apart. She had inherited her father's patience and none of his fondness for dramatic, unannounced property visits. "Third floor," Wendell said. "Nice view. Did they know who you were?" "No." A pause. "Dad, I'm just looking around." "You always say that." He could hear her typing. "And then you always end up in some situation." "I haven't ended up in anything yet," the key word being yet. More typing. "The transition team wants to do the staff briefing Monday morning. HR is already prepped. You could just wait until Monday." "I know I could, but you won't." "I'm just looking around," Wendell said again. He could hear Simone exhale. "If anyone asks, I don't know anything about this." "You never do." He ordered room service. He answered a few of the messages. He slept better than he had in a week. The next morning, Wendell came down at 8. The breakfast service was in the hotel restaurant on the ground floor, a place called Alderton Kitchen, which had the kind of menu that used words like artisanal, and locally sourced with the confidence of a place that had never questioned whether those words meant anything. Wendell didn't mind. He liked eggs. He sat at a corner table, the same canvas jacket, the same boots. The restaurant was moderately full. There was a hostess, a few servers, and a manager moving through the room. A woman in her 40s, trim and efficient, with a name tag Wendell couldn't read from where he sat. She was doing the rounds, checking in with tables, the kind of floor management that looks effortless and isn't. His server was a young man named Oscar. The name tag was clear enough. Oscar was nervous in the way of someone who was still new and had not yet found the rhythm of the job, but he was trying, and trying counts. Oscar brought water. Oscar brought a menu. Oscar apologized twice for things that didn't require apology. "You're doing fine," Wendell told him. Oscar looked briefly startled, as if he wasn't used to hearing that. Wendell ordered eggs and toast and a coffee that was, to his relief, significantly better than the gas station variety. He sat with his phone and read the news and let the morning move. He was on his second cup when Kyle Branford walked in. Kyle Branford was not in his front desk uniform. He was wearing a button-down, open at the collar, the ease of a man off the clock. He came in with another man Wendell didn't recognize, younger, maybe 25, with the build of someone who lifted weights primarily to have the build of someone who lifted weights. They took a table near the center of the room. Oscar went over to greet them. Wendell watched without appearing to watch. He had a skill for that. Kyle Branford looked up at Oscar and said something, and Oscar nodded and went to get something, and Kyle Branford leaned across the table and said something to the younger man, and both of them laughed. When Oscar came back with a basket of pastries, Kyle Branford didn't look at him. He picked up the basket, looked through it, set it to the side. "We need actual food," Kyle Branford said. "Not this." Oscar started to speak. Kyle Branford waved a hand, dismissive. Not rude enough to report, but rude enough to feel. The woman manager appeared at Oscar's shoulder. She said something to Kyle Branford with a smile that was professional and slightly too tight. Kyle Branford shrugged and said something back. The manager's smile held. Wendell watched. He was not angry yet, but the thing that had been settling since last night was starting to find its shape. He checked his email after breakfast. There was a property summary from the transition team. There was a note from the outgoing GM. A man named Brent Holloway who had run the Alderton Grand since opening, and who was, by all accounts, reliable, even-tempered, and leaving to take a position in Phoenix. Brent Holloway had written a gracious note that said all the right things and included a list of staff he considered assets. Kyle Branford's name was not on the list. Wendell sat with that for a moment. He put the phone in his jacket pocket and stood up and walked toward the front desk. Kyle Branford was back on duty at 10. He had his phone out again. The lobby was quieter now. The convention crowd had mostly dispersed to whatever event space they were booked in. There were a few guests at the desk, and Cora was handling all of them. Wendell waited until Cora's line was clear. Then he walked to the desk, specifically to Kyle Branford's station. Kyle Branford looked up. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. Not warmth, just recognition. "Something wrong with the room?" he asked. "Room's fine," Wendell said. "Chichikow's at noon if you're looking to extend. I'd need to check availability." "I'm not looking to extend." Wendell set both hands flat on the counter. "I wanted to ask you something." Kyle Branford's posture shifted, barely, but Wendell caught it. "Okay, how long have you been here?" Kyle Branford blinked. "At the Alderton, yes, 14 months. You like it?" "It's a job." Kyle Branford said it the way people say things when they think you're not worth more effort than that. Wendell nodded slowly. "The young man at breakfast this morning, Oscar, he knew?" Something moved across Kyle Branford's face. Not worry, something closer to contempt which he didn't bother to fully conceal. "Few weeks. He's getting there. He seemed like he was working hard. He's learning the standard." "The standard," Wendell repeated. "Is the standard the way you treated him this morning?" The lobby got quieter. Not actually quieter. A couple was walking through the entrance. The concierge was on the phone. The revolving door was still turning. But the particular quiet of a conversation that has changed registers. Kyle Branford straightened. "I don't know what you think you saw. I saw a server doing his job and a guest making it harder than it needed to be." "Sir." The word came out flat. "I was a guest? You work here, off the clock. Different thing, is it?" Wendell looked at him evenly. "You have a supervisor badge right there." He nodded toward the desk. "You were wearing it last night, too. I noticed the way you carry yourself doesn't change much whether you're on or off." Kyle Branford's jaw tightened. "Is there something specific I can help you with?" "Yesterday when I checked in," Wendell said, "you left my card on the counter. You didn't hand it back. You pointed at the elevator instead of walking me there or having someone walk me there. You said something to the other clerk after I walked away that I won't repeat because I don't know the exact words, but I can make a reasonable guess about the spirit of them." Kyle Branford's face had gone very still. "I provided you with service. You provided me with the minimum possible version of service." "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you." "I'm not finished," Wendell said. His voice did not rise. It never did in moments like these. That was something he had learned a long time ago, in rooms far more hostile than hotel lobbies. The quieter you stay, the louder everything else gets. Kyle Branford closed his mouth. "I want to ask you something honestly," Wendell said, "and I want an honest answer if you're capable of it. When I came in yesterday, the jacket, the bag, the coffee, what did you see?" A long pause. Kyle Branford had the look of a man running calculations. "A guest," he said finally. "That's the answer you think you're supposed to give," Wendell said. "I'm asking what you actually saw." The silence stretched. Cora, 3 feet away, had gone very still. She was not looking at either of them. She was looking at her terminal with the focused intensity of someone who is absolutely listening. "I think we should get a manager involved," Kyle Branford said. "That's probably a good idea," Wendell said. "Go ahead." The manager's name tag, up close, read Patricia Cern, Restaurant and Hospitality Manager. She was the same woman Wendell had watched on the breakfast floor. She arrived at the desk within 2 minutes, which told him she had been watching from somewhere nearby. She introduced herself to Wendell with a firm handshake and a direct look. "Mr.," she started. "Pruitt," he said. "Mr. Pruitt, I understand there's a concern I can help address." "I was just having a conversation with Mr. Branford," Wendell said. "I appreciate you coming over." Patricia Cern looked between them. She was taking inventory. Wendell had seen that look on good managers before. The quick read, the rapid assembly of context. "What happened?" she said, to both of them, but looking at Wendell. "Mr. Pruitt had some feedback about his check-in experience," Kyle Branford said, in the tone of a man who has decided to control the narrative. "I did," Wendell said. "I also had some observations about how a server named Oscar was treated during breakfast service this morning." Patricia Cern looked at Branford. Something passed across her face that was not surprise, which was its own kind of information. "I'd like to discuss those observations," Wendell said. "But first, I want to make sure I have the right person in this conversation." Patricia Cern looked at him. "I'm the senior hospitality manager on property. If it's a guest experience issue, I'm the right person." "Actually," Wendell said, "I think this might need to go a little higher." Patricia Cern tilted her head. "Our general manager, Mr. Holloway, is transitioning out. The incoming." She stopped. Something had shifted in her expression. She was looking at Wendell differently now. A small recalculation. "What did you say your name was?" "Pruitt," he said. "Wendell Pruitt." Patricia Cern was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then she said, "Pruitt Capital Group." "That's right." To her credit, Patricia Cern did not visibly flinch. She processed. She straightened by maybe a quarter inch. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "You're the acquiring principal." "I am." The lobby was doing its normal lobby things around them. People were moving. The concierge was laughing at something on a phone call. A cart of luggage was rolling toward the elevator. None of it had anything to do with the specific gravitational collapse happening at the front desk. Kyle Branford had gone the color of the marble floor. "Mr. Branford," Patricia Cern said, and her voice was very even, "I'm going to ask you to cover the desk while I speak with Mr. Pruitt privately. Please get Cora to help you if the volume picks up." Kyle Branford said nothing. He moved behind the desk. Wendell followed Patricia Cern toward a small office behind the lobby wall. She closed the door and turned to face him. "I owe you an apology on behalf of this property," she said. She didn't wait for a response. "What you described, the check-in, the service, Oscar, none of that meets the standard we're supposed to hold." "Tell me about the standard," Wendell said. Patricia Cern sat. So did Wendell. For the next 40 minutes, she talked. She talked about what worked on the floor and what didn't. She talked about Brent Holloway's tenure, which had been competent but, in her assessment, had let certain habits calcify. She talked about Kyle Branford with the careful precision of someone who had been documenting something and waiting for the right moment. "He's been written up twice," she said. Once for a similar complaint, a guest who felt they were profiled at check-in. Once for the way he addressed housekeeping staff. And he's still here. "HR process," she said, "takes time, and there was no one above Brent to push it." "There is now," Wendell said. Patricia Cern looked at him. "Yes," she said, "there is." Wendell looked around the office, cluttered with the paperwork of a property mid-transition. There was a corkboard on one wall with schedules and notes pinned to it in 5 different colors. A coffee mug on the desk that said "World's Okayest Manager," which told him something. "How long have you been here?" he asked. "Since before we opened," she said. "I was part of the pre-opening team, and you're happy in this role?" She looked at him carefully. "I'm effective in this role." Wendell nodded. That was, he thought, a better answer than happy. They walked back out together. Kyle Branford was at the desk. He had his eyes on the terminal, but his body language was the body language of a man who had been standing very still for 40 minutes waiting for something he knew was coming. He looked up when Wendell and Patricia Cern came out. Patricia Cern said, "Kyle, I need you to clock out and come to the office." Kyle Branford said, Now." He looked at Wendell. Something in his expression, not quite an apology, not quite defiance, somewhere in the gray space between the two. "I didn't know," he said. Wendell looked at him steadily. "That's kind of the whole point," he said. "There is a specific thing that happens to a person's face when the full weight of a situation lands all at once. It's not dramatic the way movies like to show it. It's smaller than that. A kind of compression." Kyle Branford stood behind the desk in the lobby of the Alderton Grand, Chicago, and experienced that compression. He didn't say anything else. He clocked out. He followed Patricia Cern toward the back office. Cora, who had been covering the desk through all of this, looked at Wendell as he turned to leave. She had a cautious expression, the kind worn by someone who has been watching something unfold and is not sure yet what it means for them. "Are we?" she started. "You're fine," Wendell said. He meant it. He had been watching her too. "You were good with that family yesterday, the one with the kids." Cora blinked. "The Garcias." "Yeah, the little one really wanted to climb everything. Hotels are interesting to kids," Wendell said. "That's actually a good thing if you think about it." Cora smiled, a real one, the startled kind that happens when someone says something unexpectedly true. "Have a good shift," Wendell told her. He went back to his room. He called Simone. "How's the looking around going?" she said immediately. "Found some things. Good things or bad things? Both," he said. "The bones are solid. There are some staffing things to sort out." A pause. "How bad? One departure. Probably a promotion. Already?" "It was already before I got here," Wendell said. "I just got to see it." Simone was quiet for a moment. "You know, most people who buy a hotel just look at the financials. The financials don't tell you what happens in the lobby at 8 in the morning, Dad." "I'm just saying, I know what you're saying," Simone said. "I've been hearing you say it my whole life." Her voice had that particular tone, the one that sounded like exasperation but sat right next to something else. Pride, maybe, though she'd never say so directly. Monday briefing is still on. You want me to adjust anything on the agenda? Yeah, Wendell said. Add Oscar from the restaurant. I want to talk to him. Oscar. She typed something. I don't know it yet. Find out. Anything else? Wendell sat on the edge of the bed again. Outside, Michigan Avenue was moving the way Michigan Avenue always moved. Taxis and buses and people with places to be and some with nowhere to be at all. The whole complicated human traffic of a city that never quite slows down. Patricia Cern, he said. She's been here since before opening. Put her on the list for a longer conversation. I want to know what the property looks like from where she's standing. Got it. That's all for now. He hung up. He sat with the quiet for a while. 14 months. Kyle Branford had been here 14 months, had seen hundreds of guests come through that door, had probably made the same calculation hundreds of times, the quick scan, the silent sorting, the minimum service for the people who looked like they might not belong. The thing about that kind of prejudice is that it is so ordinary it gets mistaken for professionalism, for standard, for just how things are. Wendell Pruitt had walked into more lobbies like this one than he could count, had been on the receiving end of that scan more times than he cared to remember, long before he had the resources to do anything about it. He remembered what it felt like to know exactly what someone saw when they looked at you, and to know they were wrong, and to know there was nothing you could say that would make any difference. He also remembered the moment that changed, when he had enough capital, enough ownership, enough standing, to walk back through those same kinds of doors and change what happened inside them. He hadn't bought the Alderton Grand to get a good night's sleep. He bought it because buildings have to have people inside them, and the people inside them shape what the building actually is. And what the building actually is shapes what everyone who walks through the door experiences. Every morning, every shift, every family with 3 kids and too many bags, every solo traveler with a gas station coffee and boots that had seen better days. The Alderton Grand was going to be a different place by the end of the quarter. Not because of the tile or the chandeliers or the thread count of the sheets, all of which were already excellent. Because Wendell had made sure of that before the first guests ever arrived, but because of what happened at the front desk, and in the restaurant, and in the small exchanges that nobody ever sees on a balance sheet, but that every guest carries with them out the door. He ordered room service again. He answered the rest of his messages. He slept. Monday was going to be a full day.